Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ramadan Kareem. Dr. Chipman, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure for me to be speaking at yet another Shangri-La dialogue. It seems as if I've become a permanent fixture here. But I don't mind really, because the SLD remains a premier forum for the best security minds in the Asia-Pacific to really come together. I have been asked to speak on the topic of new challenges for crisis management in the Asia-Pacific. This title may be self-evident, but make no mistake, we as a region are facing challenges and crises. Indeed, 6 months after the climatic global events of 2016, the Asia-Pacific seems to be faced with the prospects of fires, small or big, across the length and breadth of our lands that we will have to scramble to put out. Doing so will not be easy, nor will it be quick. So this topic, ladies and gentlemen, is highly timely. In many ways, the Asia-Pacific is a paradoxical position. We are in a position of relative peace, with no major wars being fought here. But however, underlying tensions, as well as the actions of non-state actors, continue to threaten the tranquility of our shores. Global economic gravity is rapidly shifting eastward. Our economies remain fragile, and truly equitable development has eluded us. Also, our regional security architecture remains predicated upon the whims of major or external powers. After thinking about what I should be addressing at this year's Shangri-La Dialogue, I have decided on 5 which I feel most relevant, especially in my primary job as Malaysia's Minister of Defense. And I make no apologies for this. As Malaysia, in many ways, perhaps unwittingly, is at the center or even front lines of the great security questions facing our region. The 5 challenges: first, proliferation of Daesh's Asia-Pacific ambitions and expanding global footprints. Second, escalating tensions and volatility in the Korean Peninsula. Third, inconsistencies in the quest of hegemony over the South China Sea. Fourth, democratization of information flow, the punishing 24/7 news cycle, fake news, and vulnerable cybersecurity infrastructure. And finally, the rise of authoritarian and populist nationalism sentiments as antithesis to globalization. On the first point, to me, the most immediate challenge in my mind is meeting head-on the threat of Daesh. Although the situation in Syria and to a lesser extent Iraq remains tangled, it cannot be denied that real military gains have been made against Daesh in the last couple of months. This, however, gives rise to the disturbing prospect that the Asia-Pacific is now in Daesh's crosshairs. Daesh's threat to our region is real. It is multidimensional, whether from returning fighters, regional franchises, or more disturbingly, from self-radicalized lone wolves. There is a grave danger that existing fault lines in our region will be exploited, as well as exacerbated. You are all, of course, no doubt aware of the recent attacks in Manchester in the United Kingdom, Jakarta in Indonesia, and Marawi in the Philippines. These incidents were horrible and involved the needless loss of innocent lives. To our British, Indonesian, and Filipino friends, our hearts, thoughts, and prayers are with you. But Malaysia, too, has not been spared from Daesh's threat. Over the last week, at least 6 individuals linked to Daesh were arrested. From 2013 to 2016, Malaysia has arrested some 250 individuals suspected of militant activity. It also pains me to see that Malaysians were also involved in the Marawi attacks. Many of the individuals involved were from seemingly good, even prosperous backgrounds or professions. This highlights the insidious nature of radicalization. We cannot generalize on who can turn into a lone wolf. And how do we meet these challenges? Is the solution political? Is it socio-economic? Is it theological? All this defies easy answers. My second point is 2017 has witnessed a steady worsening of the situation in the Korean Peninsula. No one, certainly not Malaysians, could have foreseen that we would be directly impacted by it. The assassination of King John Nam reminds us Malaysians again that we were not insulated from the world, nor are we isolated from its troubles. The problem is not exclusively due to the erratic, unpredictable nature of the Pyongyang regime. While President Moon Jae-in's desire for negotiations with the North is highly laudable, the fact that this has not stopped the North from conducting what seems to be almost weekly missile tests. The controversies over the THAAD systems makes for a potentially combustible situation. And here, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to reiterate Malaysia's call for restraint. Restraint in the Korean Peninsula. No one will benefit from conflict, especially when nuclear weapons are involved. This then brings me to the third point, the South China Sea dispute. While progress made on the framework for the South China Sea Code of Conduct between China and ASEAN is heartening, it is also prudent for our optimism to be guarded. The chance of a black swan event or unforeseen, unintended, accidental incidents at sea or in the air remain very real. Undoubtedly, this is a complex issue and we must do whatever it takes, putting aside our egos, our pride, putting aside our anger in trying to find a way forward. Combative statements, whether from the inside or outside region, are not helpful. This is critical as a small trigger can spark into something greater. Malaysia's position is quite clear and will not shift. The South China Sea issue must be resolved peacefully and via a multilateral platform, especially a platform that involves direct stakeholders like ASEAN. The recent Belt and Road Forum in Beijing has highlighted how China is rising as the fulcrum of growth in the Asia-Pacific. However, its ambitious plans for new Silk Roads, as well as the dreams for countries in our region for better infrastructure and stronger economies, will be futile if we cannot rid ourselves of the suspicions and the hostilities the ongoing disputes have caused. This brings me then to the fourth point, where governments are now increasingly finding themselves having to manage the seemingly uncontrolled spread of information and news, whether real or fake, facilitated by the rapid growth of information technology. The 24/7 news cycle has long been a reality, but the proliferation of multiple social media applications often means that we are dealing with several streams at once, often with vastly different narratives. Fake news, hate news, hat news. We need to wrap our minds around it. The alleged hacking of the 2016 US presidential election is, of course, well known. And recently, the apparent hacking of official websites in Qatar nearly caused a diplomatic incident after it was alleged that its emir has criticized President Donald Trump, has backed Iran, and criticized the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This then brings me to my final point: the challenge posed by the growth of authoritarian populist nationalism. While it has manifested itself most potently in the West, the fact that it is not a phenomenon exclusive to any part of the world. Discontent over the failure of a globalization to also bring about equity and social engagement is being felt worldwide. The irony here is that Asia, which was once on the receiving end of lectures on the importance of globalization, may very well end up as its standard bearer. The East has certainly benefited from a more open and interconnected world. But then again, if we fail to ensure that it benefits everyone, the political turmoil that is stalking Europe and America could well visit our shores. There is nothing wrong at all with wanting to put our country and our citizens first. The problem is when such sentiments are accompanied by religious and ethnic chauvinism, or even outright hostility, or xenophobia to international cooperation. The seemingly unending plight of the Rohingya people of Myanmar is a case in point. Stable societies, a stable world for that matter, can only be built by common understanding, acceptance, as well as give and take. This cannot come about if we see nation building and managing the world's affairs as a zero-sum game. If we regard every concession as a sign of weakness, or if we let our personal insecurities dictate policy, allowing the weakening of multinational, multilateral institutions or processes, whether it be the ASEAN institution, the European Union, NATO, or the United Nations, in the name of national interest, I believe would be a disaster. Dealing with this multifaceted struggle that we now find ourselves locked in, between nationalism and globalization, between populism and technocracy, between the closing of hearts and minds and pluralism, these new challenges for crisis management, our topic today, could very well be the cause of our lifetimes. So what is the way forward, ladies and gentlemen? 2016 has left many people with a rather bitter taste. And the new problems that I just outlined may seem overwhelming, but we should not lose hope. Many will disagree, but I believe humans by nature are essentially noble and more inclined towards good. I believe this because I lived it. In Malaysia's darkest hour, during the disappearance of the Malaysian Airlines MH370 and the shooting down of the MH17, there were times when I felt like giving up. There were times when I wished it would just go away, but it didn't. But it was during this time of need that our friends from regions far and beyond came to our aid without hesitation and selflessly. Old friendships were strengthened while new ones were forged. The coming together that the disappearance of MH370 caused is evidence that nations can still cooperate, that the worst of times can still bring out the very best in us, and that adversity can still bring opportunity to all of us. But we must be clear, that was based on a disaster. The issues I alluded to earlier are much more dire. We must simply do more, ladies and gentlemen. So allow me to propose 5 solutions. First, the championing of moderation, both within and across borders. Secondly, renewing commitments to regional and international cooperation. Thirdly, building trust and confidence with common humanitarian objectives. Fourthly, making security relevant in a digital age. And finally, bold, firm, yet compassionate leadership. Meeting the first threat of religious extremism cannot be met by one country alone. The problem, as we have seen, does not respect national borders, and thinking that one nation can do it alone is delusional. Moreover, our focus cannot solely be on hard solutions. And as I said in the Shangri-La dialogue before, the direst threat cannot be resolved by simply bombing certain countries into submission, nor can it be resolved by knee-jerk reactions. I believed this last year in 2016, and even more this year. As such, we must also seek to win the wars of ideas. It's not enough to stop terrorist attacks. We must also defeat and discredit the arguments they are used to justify them. Moderation is the key. While it has not always been smooth sailing for us, moderation and pluralism has always been at the heart of what Malaysia is. The King Salman Center for International Peace, which is a joint initiative between Malaysia and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has just begun operations 4 days ago. The KSCIP will seek to counter terrorism and extremism by promoting peace in our part of the world, working in close contact with other bodies such as the recently launched GCCEI, the Global Center for Combating Extremist Ideology in Riyadh. As much as the problem of extremism is a universal one, like it or not, it has been laid upon the door of the global ummah, and we must take leadership in resolving it. Therefore, it is my belief that today, more than ever, it is very important for us to put a united front, building a coalition and a movement of moderates, a host of like-minded nations, to be a voice of reason to counter terrorism and extremism. With like-minded friends on board, burden is shared and courage is multiplied. And this will lead us to the light at the end of the tunnel, inshallah. The second point looking forward is that nations must commit even more strongly than before to regional cooperation and processes. But instead of looking beyond ASEAN, the foundation of wider security cooperation can be laid on smaller building blocks, such as sub-regional cooperation initiatives. Together with Bapak Riyamizat and Secretary Delphin of the Philippines, we are working towards a trilateral partnership that will provide greater security in the Sulu Straits via joint sea and air patrols. And ASEAN, this year, will mark its 50th anniversary. While we still have a long way to go in perfecting regional integration, I still believe that the pillars of mutual respect, of non-interference, and inclusiveness is a model for successful regional partnerships moving forward. It is now more than ever, we need to show the world that the ASEAN way is far more than just leaders holding hands in photos. Certainly no other model, despite the inherent difficulties, could work in a region as diverse as Southeast Asia. But we in ASEAN must believe in ourselves. We in ASEAN must rise to the occasion to take leadership. All difficulties can eventually be surmounted so long as mutual trust, respect, and transparency remains. Ladies and gentlemen, the third solution I am proposing today is that greater confidence and trust can be built through initiatives such as military diplomacy and humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. I have often felt that it is vital to connect our serving men and women together not only to discuss the profession of arms, but to also work together to assist the vulnerable. And we don't need to look very far beyond ASEAN. Widespread flooding and devastating mudslides in Sri Lanka have killed at least 200 people and displaced more than 500,000 people. Helping just one person in Sri Lanka may not mean anything to the world, but for that one person, it will mean the world. Fourth, the challenges posed by cybersphere means that this must now be regarded as another theater of defense for our countries. We should not only seek to defend our people on land, air, and sea, but also in the internet. This means that tomorrow's warriors will be a very different one from today. The soldier, the sailor, and the airman of the future must not only be a shooter, but also a coder and also a hacker. Wars will no longer be won with just bullets and missiles, but algorithms. Therefore, nations must cooperate to not only crack down on cyber criminals, but also to ensure that the security, both regional and global, cyber infrastructure is intact. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, leadership. I've always said that this is an indispensable part of global affairs. Again, the events of 2016 have reinforced this. If there ever was a time that patience, courage, wisdom, sincerity, and a stomach of steel was needed, it is now. Cool heads and measured words may not grab headlines, but they are more likely to contribute to a future of peace and prosperity. It may not excite your followers, but it will do more to create a world which their descendants will be grateful to be living in. In the months and years to follow, there may be many incidents where lashing out would seem like the easiest option. But if we love our children, then these are the hardships that we must bear. To work patiently, to unite our fractured world, to heal the divide, and to endure whatever tomorrow will bring. I end by just saying that I'm forever an optimist, and I must be, because I am a father and a grandfather of two beautiful boys, Adian and Adrian. It's up to us to build the kind of future that our children will have to live in. They will pay for our mistakes, our shortcomings, and our hesitations. Let us hope and pray in this holy month of Ramadan al-Mubarak. God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will give us strength. Strength for us to find a way forward, and strength given to us soon, because a better tomorrow must and can only build today. Sekian wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.